What's up guys, this is Balázs from Racing Brig. Today's video will be the first of its kind in the history of the channel. I've never done an interview before. I had the chance to have an exciting discussion with the product owner of the Powered Up app, Mr. Flemming Bjørn Jessen. Grab some snacks and drinks because it won't be short, but I really hope you will find it interesting and useful. Apologies for the sound quality. I had some technical issues, so I had to use my backup camera's voice recording, but hopefully it's understandable. Subtitles are available as usual, and you will find a link above and in the description to a written condensed version of the interview on my webpage. So let's start. So, first of all, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to ask your questions about Powered Up. Can you please tell me a bit about yourself and your role? What does it mean to be the product owner of the Powered Up app?
Yes, of course, and thank you so much for letting me having this opportunity to answer some of your questions. So my role at Lego is I'm a product owner for the Lego Powered Up app, and I'm what we call a senior producer. And a producer at Lego is much like a film or a movie producer. So I'm responsible for the day-to-day, the daily development and design of the application. My role as a product owner for the Powered Up app is a little bit different in the way that I'm also responsible for the creative direction of the app. So that means driving a backlog of things that needs to be done, but also prioritizing what goes into that backlog. And that's a little bit going out and talking to stakeholders internally in Lego and figuring out what is the next steps with Powered Up, what are the gaps that Powered Up is supposed to fill, and also managing the testing track and the insight track that we have with Powered Up to figure out what should be the next thing that we focus on in Powered Up. So that is my primary responsibility, taking care of the development team and making sure that they are on track with deliveries, and also interfacing with the design team, briefing them on new design directions and reviewing the designs that they do. And then also, of course, looking out into the field, to gathering those insights and those inputs from relevant stakeholders and users, of course.
And so does this include also the Control Plus app, or that's something different, that's separate?
Yeah, that's separate. So the Control Plus app has its own producer that is responsible for the day-to-day development and design of that one.
Mm-hmm. So there are, as I understand, there are separate teams for the Powered Up app, the Control Plus app. There's also a team who's responsible for the hardware part.
Yes.
So are you the one in the middle of all this, trying to coordinate things?
Yeah, you can say that in a way. So each app in Lego has its own producer attached that is responsible for driving the development of that app. And we are kind of horizontally and vertically shaped in the way that the producers talk together and make sure that we align and try to align different releases. So something doesn't release in one app and then something different in another that doesn't really talk together. So we try to align that as much as possible. And then also within, so we have our Powered Up has a team attached to it, and the other products has teams attached to them, and we try to the different roles in those teams also try to align to create some kind of coherency between the work that we do. But it's also important to say that we are in a big company, and sometimes things fall between chairs and slip between the cracks, and then we just deal with it. That's a little bit the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah, I understand that. Let's talk a bit about the naming, because that's a bit confusing for me. You know, when we had Power Functions, that was a single name and that was all. But now we have the Powered Up system, but there are multiple apps. So Powered Up app, Control Plus app, and also the education series. And it is quite difficult to identify the hardware elements, because someone says Control Plus motor, someone says Powered Up motor. Then there's also an official naming in the Lego shop. So we have the Move Hub, and I think the AAA hub is simply called a hub. Yeah. So it's quite confusing. So what should be the official way of things?
Well, I wish I could tell you this is not only a problem externally, internally. We are also the different hubs is also known by many names. We have this saying. So Lego is a Danish company, and in Danish we have the saying that a dear child has many names. And I guess it's the same with these hubs, because the hubs are used in a lot of different products, and that means that the different product teams know the hub in the context of their product. So for the train team, the Lego City train, the hub of course becomes the city hub or the train hub, and for the superhero team that used the hub in the Batmobile, it of course becomes the Batmobile hub. So it's not that black and white. But we have, of course, our department called Product Technology are the department responsible for all our hardware. They have called those the two platforms Lego Power Functions 1 and Lego Power Functions 2, and that's kind of the official names from the production side and from the hardware side. But I guess, as you say, on shop legoshop.com, that is where we find the official name. But it is a little bit difficult to get people to use it because people have different contexts for the different hubs.
Yeah, if you call something simply just a hub, then it becomes quite confusing.
Yes, and I think to add even more confusion to that, I think some hubs have even changed name over time. Yeah.
Yes.
But then again, when you talk about the Boost hub and you talk about the simple hub or the smart hub, then people get an idea of what we're talking about. And the technique hub is also a good name for the gray newer hub in the technique models. So that's usually what we call them.
So about the apps, how you differentiate the role of the different apps that all control basically the same type of hardware. So there is the Powered Up app, Boost app, Control Plus app, Spy Prime even. So yeah. What is the difference?
So the difference is that most of the apps that we do that connect to hardware and control hardware are product apps. So the Boost app and the Droid Commander app and the Control Plus app and even the Spike Prime app is product apps. They are apps that comes together with a product, and they are tailor-made for that product to work with that product. What sets them aside from Powered Up is kind of the crux of all this, and you could kind of say the intersection of all Lego products, connected Lego products. We want Powered Up to be the kind of the catch-all for all Lego connected hardware. So we don't have a specific product attached. And when I say that, that's actually not true, because we have the product lobby where we have a few products that kind of belongs in the Powered Up app. And that's a solution we have chosen to provide other products with the opportunity of having a connected experience. The experiences you find in Powered Up, the product experiences, they are not super advanced. It's not like Droid Commander or Control Plus, where you get a lot of content and you get a lot of functionality within the app. It's more connect, control, and code in Powered Up. And we want Powered Up to be that place where you go when you've maybe bought the Droid Commander set a year back, and now you want to do something different with the hub and the motors and the sensor. So you build your own thing, and Powered Up is supposed to be the place to go where you could go in and build your own model, connect to it, and make it do really cool things in there.
Yeah, yesterday I saw an interesting question about the apps, about the set-specific apps, because the Control Plus app is already I wouldn't call it a small piece of software. And what will happen, like in 3 years, when there will be 5-6 more app-controlled apps? So how big can an app become, or will you do like a yearly app release, or are there any plans to resolve this?
Yes. So that is probably where Powered Up comes into the picture, because there sometimes app gets retired and you sunset an app because its time has passed and the product still lives, but the app might be outdated. And that is where Powered Up comes in, maybe not in the form that you know it today, but the concept of Powered Up being the place that will always support hardware. That is kind of that is the agenda we are trying to push with Powered Up. So in 5 or 10 years, when you have your Boost hub or you have your City hub, and you want to pull that Lego box out of the shelf and give it life again, we want you to have a place to go. And I can promise you that it will be called Powered Up in 5 or 10 years. But I can promise you that we will have a place where you can go and make sure that those models don't die and become useless. We want to create a place for you where you can use that hardware also in the future. Yeah.
That's really nice to hear, because that's one of the main concerns I see all the time regarding the app connected
exactly.
Lego sets. It's like, okay, I buy it today, but what will happen in 2, 5, 10 years? Will it become like a useless piece of plastic, or
exactly
how will it be supported? But it's good to hear that you are also thinking about that.
Yeah, and I think that the latest update we did in Powered Up is a good example of us trying to be true to that promise. It might not be right now. It might be a bit advanced, and it might not be the best solution. But the idea is there, and you can actually get it to work. You can use your old power functions and manipulate it through Bluetooth, and we totally acknowledge that it is advanced. And
it is.
Yeah, it is. But we thought better get it out there and get it into the hands of the more advanced users, and then collect the feedback and try to improve it and make it more user friendly. Yeah.
Okay. The development of the Control Plus app, so it is tied to the different projects, the different sets. What about the development of the Powered Up app? How do you define the roadmap for that? What are the priorities? How do you decide which functions come and go?
Yes. So actually, it reflects also a little bit the product apps, because we have a few products in Powered Up. So of course, some of our roadmap is tailored around the product launches that is going to live within the Powered Up universe and within the Powered Up app. So that part of the roadmap looks a lot like Control Plus or Droid Command or the other product apps where that has products coming out, and then they get a new update to go with that product. Where Powered Up differs from Control Plus is that we in Powered Up in the Powered Up team have a very wide user group. We target the youngest user, that is just kids that really want to play with their Lego models and have a what we call instant gratification. They want to build their model, they want to connect the model, and they want to have a cool play experience right away. That is kind of the one end of the spectrum. And then we have the other end of the spectrum, that is our AFOLs, that is very technically advanced, and every time we do an update, they dive in and they scrutinize it and really try to figure out, what does this do and what am I able to do with this. So you can see that we have a very, very wide spectrum of users that we need to cater for. So each time that we do an update, the update is targeted one end of the spectrum or somewhere in between. And the way we figure out what features to do is, of course, we rely a lot on our insights track. So we do usability testing with kids. We just had a huge test up in Lego World here in Copenhagen in Denmark, where we had a lot of kids come in and play with Powered Up, and to really get a feel of so how do they use the app right now, and where are areas where we need to improve. Then we also have in our insights track, we have of course stakeholder interviews internally, where we ask internal users what would they like of Powered Up. And then finally, as this interview is a part of, we try to reach out to AFOLs as well, to get feedback and to learn what are actually the needs and they see and identify within Powered Up, and then also try to steer in that direction. So there is a lot of input, and there is a lot of different voices that we try to listen to, and then we try to prioritize all these input and figure out, okay, so what is most important right now?
Well, based on what I see or what I hear as a feedback from a lot of various channels, so for the ones who is into coding, Powered Up app is really a heaven, because advanced coding functionalities. So who understands it, it's fine. But what I see a little bit missing is the audience who is into electronics, into RC, used power functions previously, and just wants a little bit of customization, like having the rally car or the 4x4, and let's say I would like to add a light to it, and I would like still be able to use the functionality that is provided by the Control Plus app, but there's an extra port on the hub, so I would like to attach a Powered Up light to it and still be able to drive the car, or who wants to create a simple Lego car, that was easily possible with power functions and infrared remote control, and wants to do the same with Powered Up. So I think that there are a lot of users like that out there, but I don't really see at the moment that the Powered Up app is serving their needs.
No, and that is a good observation, and that is also one of the areas where we probably are less successful with Powered Up, and one of the areas where we need to focus in the future. I can't really talk to a specific solution right now, but it is something that we are aware of. This more of a plug and play interaction and need that Powered Up probably also should meet. So I guess that's one of the good gaps that we still need to fill at some point in the future.
Yeah. We are eagerly waiting to see what comes. From my experience, what I see is that people would prefer to see the basic and easily usable functions first, and then go in the advanced way. So at the moment, Powered Up apps seem to go the other way around. So starting with the advanced functions, and then going back to the simple level.
Yeah. Exactly, and talking to the different ends of the spectrum, I think that's actually also a good picture on where Powered Up is right now. We have started in one end of the spectrum and in the other end of the spectrum, and then we are slowly trying to work our way into the middle, because we cater for the youngest kids and we cater for the very advanced defaults, but maybe somewhere in between, that is where we need to focus a little bit.
Yeah. Well, talking about the controls, the power functions infrared system had many limitations and flaws, but now with Powered Up we have much more possibilities. But at the moment, for remote control, we only have the train remote, which offers with the buttons, it's a similar bang control like we had with infrared. So I know that you can talk about future products or anything, but do you consider a more advanced physical remote system? Because the app interface is nice and it gives you a lot of possibilities, but I know that there are tons of folks out there who prefer physical controls.
Yes. And I think this is something that we also talk a lot about internally with Lego. So in the app team, of course, I cannot talk to the specifics of hardware, but it is high on our wish list to have more customizable controls. We even talked about the little handset remote that we have, just adding studs to that, so you could add your small little sticks and stuff like that. I know they are exploring all kinds of different directions, But of course, it needs to go through the proper process and all that stuff. I know, especially with hardware, that they are very they are working with the constraint of child safety, and that is always something that comes up and makes it difficult to make hardware and do it with a fast turnaround time. But I think there's definitely a need and a use for those more customizable controllers, as you talk about, and then those physical controllers. But let's see what the future brings, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the available third-party developments, but there are some great apps that already use hardware. Hardware elements like a brick controller too. It's, you can use you can control almost any Lego hardware with a connected gamepad, and it's quite popular. So I really think that it shows the demand.
Exactly.
That people would like to use physical controls.
Yes, definitely. And there is a lot of really cool stuff out there, and really cool stuff that we are also watching closely, both to get inspiration and to figure out is that directions that we can pursue in the future as well.
That sounds good. So about the development path of Powered Up, what was the main reason to go I would say the Boost way of customization? So when you started this whole journey of Powered Up, I know you had already V2 as a similar hardware platform. I think Boost was the first to introduce the coding blocks. So when you decided on the path for Powered Up, what was the main reason to go the same way as Boost? So you already had Boost as the coding experience. So for Powered Up, wasn't there any option to go on a lighter level? I would say, like, something without coding actually.
Yes. So at the time, coding was a very big thing on the agenda. I actually think We Do 2.0 was the first one to introduce the horizontal blocks, and that was based on the Scratch Junior and a collaboration with MIT back when they launched that product. And I think Boost was then they continued to build on that programming language and creating what we now know as our internal Lego coding language, which is what you see in Boost and what you also see a version of in Powered Up. I think the reason we chose to continue to pursue the coding direction is that we feel that there is a need for a platform, for an app platform where you can highly customize your Lego creations. And that is the purpose of Powered Up. The purpose of Powered Up is that you have with the Lego brick system, you have infinite possibilities, and you can really be creative. And Powered Up is kind of the digital answer to that, and the digital mirror to that, or at least that is the ambition. That Powered Up is a toolbox where you have virtually creative freedom to build whatever you want and create behaviors for your Lego models. And then we can talk about is it then simple enough, or is it too advanced right now? And that again comes back to the whole spectrum of users. Yes, right now it's probably too advanced. We have really achieved what we wanted with creating a creative freedom, so you can actually do a lot with Powered Up. But now is the time to take that all that creativity and make it. You could say democratize it and make it available for the younger users.
Yeah. About talking about the younger users, did you run tests to compare the usability of power functions and Powered Up? So if you give like a box of hubs and motors and everything to, or battery boxes to a kid. So, physically it is easy to attach a motor with an infrared receiver and try the remote and just play with it.
Yes.
It's not quite possible, I would say, or not really the same experience with powered up.
Exactly. I really like this question because it is a little bit like comparing apples with candy and then giving both to a kid and saying, what do you want the most? Well, of course they want the candy. The apple is not that isn't that preferable when you have the candy in front of you. I see it's a little bit the same with power functions and powered up. Power functions is of course easy plug and play, and you can do something right away. That is probably where powered up is a little bit deeper and gives you that more control and that more. You can manipulate it a little bit more and do more advanced stuff in powered up. So it is a little bit comparing two different things, and I totally acknowledge that power functions plug and play is much faster in getting an experience and getting something to move and getting your Lego model to do cool things. But I think the kids that want a little bit more and that wants their model to do a little bit more and maybe do something that is behavior based. For example, if I do this to a sensor, then the motor reacts in this or that way. Then all of a sudden you need something more advanced than just plug and play. And I think that's where powered up comes in.
Yeah. About boost and so the difference between boost and powered up. I know that boost is supposed to be like a teaching environment for coding, and
Yes.
It gives you a lot of tutorials and detailed explanations for the different code blocks. I really miss that in the powered up app.
Yes. And that is also a place where we have plans to do more with our coding environment. We spent the fall trying to redesign a lot of the framework around the app in Powered Up, and the coding environment is kind of the next phase, and is an area where we need to redesign and do something more, especially in order to make it more user friendly to kids.
Yes, and I know that maybe. Those written information would not be the primary source for kids, but there are a lot of parents out there who are the first. They are in the first line because if the kid doesn't know something, then they will turn to the parent, and the parent will instantly look for information in the app itself. So I would say that it's really needed to provide information there.
And we're looking into several options, everything from small on-screen tutorials, like from Boost, to maybe a little heavier video tutorials and stuff like that. So we are looking at different things that we can do. So that's going to be really interesting to see then what can we actually do in the app that both works and also not makes the experience much more complex.
Yeah, well, I try to do it one way by creating like a table of all code blocks and sharing little pieces of information and little example snippets, and I have to say that it's very popular. So
yes.
So there are, I don't know, thousands of views on these pages. So
yes.
So there is a demand for sure.
Exactly, and that is also really that is also something that we rely on, because we know that our users, when they have trouble in the app, they go online and they Google it right away. So we are really appreciative and thankful that we have a big community that really steps up when we are missing something in the app. So that's super cool.
Thanks. Yeah, well, what I realized is actually there is a level of complexity at the moment in the Powered Up app, but I see traces already with those combined blocks that you try to simplify the experience. So I think that you will keep this way of so this framework going forward, like using the code blocks. But I think that introducing like a mid-level experience would be really great with combined blocks that you can simply drag and drop. So I would say one block for steering, one block for motor control, power control. You could simply tie the virtual controllers to it, and then for the advanced users, there could be an opportunity to open up these combined blocks and then see the how it works inside and tinker with it and play with it. So I hope to see something similar in the future.
That is a really good idea, and also an idea that we are trying to pursue. Yeah.
Okay. About the controllers and the software interface. So now we have two fixed control interfaces. People are really looking forward to see something that is a bit more customizable.
Yes.
So are there anything that you can say about this?
I can say that we are looking into customizable controllers, and I think that is as much as I will say at this point. It is a little bit of a teaser, and it is something that is coming soon. But you'll know more at the end of this month.
Oh, it's really nice to hear. About the timelines. So we were informed previously that power functions will be phased out by the end of this year. So phasing out means that it won't be available officially, but I'm sure it will live with us for a long time. So do you think that by the end of the year, Powered Up will be up and running and being able to replace power functions in general?
Oh, that's hard to tell. I never think we'll replace power functions 100% because we are not that plug and play solution as power functions was. You would still have to open the app and connect to your device, and then from there either do either control or do coding. So I don't think we will replace it in the way of replacing the experience, but I think yes, we will be there in that we are an alternative. We are an alternative to power functions.
Okay, I checked the feedback of the apps in the iOS and Android app stores. And the most frequent item that comes up is about documentation or the lack of documentation. So and there was an interesting comment from the customer service that also popped up multiple times. And I have to read it because it says, generally we don't provide a lot of external documentation for our apps because we want to encourage fans to play and experiment to figure out what the different coding blocks do. So as you said, Powered Up is supposed to be like a tool. So if I buy a tool, I expect a manual coming with it.
Yes.
And at the moment, Powered Up is like a very complex toolbox without instructions.
Yes.
So figuring out, so there is, I would say, there is a potential target audience who loves to discover things and loves to experiment with stuff. Yeah. But I would say the majority of people would like to know how to use a tool and then do something with it.
You know, when I buy power tools, I usually take the manual and then just fling it in the corner, and then I don't know where it is.
That's how you potentially end up in the hospital.
That's true. No, I think, and to get a little bit back to the answer that you find online, the reason the answer is phrased that way is when we take Powered Up to the kids and do these usability tests, we actually see kids doing what you say. They just dive right in, they experiment, and they try different things out. Every time they see a dialog box or something with text, they either skip it or really fast or really quickly close it again. So the answer is probably more targeted towards the kids that are in nature much more explorative and much more trial and error, try things out, see if it works, and if it doesn't, try something else. That is really where this whole idea stems from. And we totally acknowledge that there is a lack of documentation, especially for the parents and the AFOLs that, as you say, I want to know how this function works. I don't want to experiment with it until I get the answers. So I totally see the problem there. What we want to do is actually is to try to make the experience so intuitive that you don't need a lot of documentation. That is kind of our first priority, to make sure that when you use a programming block, the iconography is clear to read, and the one-to-one feedback or interaction when you connect it is easy to decipher and easy to learn what does this actual block do. That is kind of the first thing that we want to do. And then secondly, if we do something that is so advanced that you can't really decipher it from an icon or from plugging it in and executing, then that is where we need the documentation. So that also explains a little bit why we haven't felt the urgency to improve our documentation, because we actually see kids do the trial and error, and now we get to a point where we see, all right, we also need to provide that documentation for parents and AFOLs. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
I still see the gap with the folks who are not into coding at all or does not have coding experience. Like among kids, I'm sure there are a lot of kids who does not have coding experience. So without that, I would say it's quite a challenge to understand, like why one block runs constantly and why the other one doesn't, and that would require a loop.
Yes.
And that's a very basic coding principle. Like you need loops to run stuff constantly. But for someone who does not have coding experience, that's something that is really hard to figure out without any help.
Yeah. And you're totally right. There's a gap there where we need to figure out how can we actually make an interface where a user can plug in motors and sensors into their hub, and then by just clicking a few things, manipulate whatever they built, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with coding, but more direct manipulation of their hardware. I think you are correct in that we have a gap there that we need to fill.
Yeah, I would say that some basic tutorials or videos or something. I know that it's quite a challenge for you guys to provide information, because you can't provide it only in English, but you need to translate to a zillion different languages. So wherever you use text, then it takes tons of time to translate everything. But maybe videos or simple step-by-step tutorials would be great, especially using the web interface. So Lego.com, I know there is a powered up section, there is an FAQ, but it does not really provide too much information at the moment, and it really lags behind the software releases. So in the powered up latest update, about the infrared control, there was a promise that the documentation will be available on Lego.com, but I think it's like more than a month now, and we still don't have anything. So I'm not sure what are the plans there, or I'm sure there is an effort, but it would be nice to know to see more coming there as well.
Definitely. And we are actually working on revamping the powered up section of Lego.com, because we know that there's a lack of information, and we also acknowledge that there is a need for a place where people can go and find this information, and also documentation once we have that. So that is something that we are looking into, and we want to improve that place and have that place be the go-to destination for everything around powered up.
That's nice to see. About the advanced users, I know that the protocol used by Powered Up is already shared out there. I think it was early 2019 when it was shared, but it was not really updated ever since. So are there any plans to provide more up-to-date information? Because third-party coders and people are doing a very good job finding solutions, but I know by I'm not a coder, but I'm trying to do my best to help people who has the knowledge. So we spent an awfully lot of time to figure out, for example, how to use the hardware encoder of the motors for steering, because that one is not documented. So can we expect some updates on that?
Yes, and just to let you know, we are in the same boat. I'm also not a coder. I'm a designer in my background, so I totally understand you there. I know this has been looked into. I can't tell you where we are with it, but I know people back at the office are very aware that this is a demand and a need, and there are people looking into this.
About that hardware encoder. Personally, I'm mostly building Lego cars, so probably I'm too focused on this. But one of my biggest pain point is the servo control for powered up, because it's quite a different approach from the power functions servo we had, and it has tons of potential and a lot of possibilities.
Yes.
But at the moment. I try to replicate a simple calibration sequence and simple, let's say simple return to center servo control, and I came up with a huge wall of code that sort of works, but still does not offer the same experience as you get in the Control Plus sub. So please do something with this.
Then I have good news for you. We are actually planning, I think, with our next release to release a servo block. That will help a little bit with this.
That would be really nice to see.
Yes.
So, are there anything else that you can share about the platform and the plans without saying, of course, anything about specific products?
Yeah, without saying too much. Well, I can say that that Powered Up is alive and well. We are not in the place where I want us to be yet, but I know that we are working in that direction. We will keep adding those smaller products to our product lobby and Powered Up, and we will keep improving the Powered Up app and actually also improve a lot of the things that we've talked about in this interview. Of course, and unfortunately, the Powered Up team's resources are not infinite, and that means that we have to prioritize. And we hear the demand for documentation, but we also acknowledge that is probably an area we have neglected because we felt that there were other things that needed higher prioritization. So it is for us. It's always a kind of a challenge to weigh: do we do this improvement or do we do this documentation, and when can we do what, and when does the team have the resources, and when do we have a free pipeline to get these updates out there? So I think that is one of the things, and then of course, and now in this time with the whole COVID-19 situation, most of us in the teams are working from home, and that also provides or sets some challenges for us. Right now, I don't think it impacts our roadmap and our plans too much. But you never know what will happen. So right now we are kind of in a day-to-day and a week-to-week to see if we can get things out in the release schedule that we have planned. But I can say that Powered Up is alive and well, and there will be many more cool things to come in the future.
That's great to hear, and we are eagerly waiting to see them.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for all the information that you could provide to us.
Thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview. This was very good, and love to do this again sometime.
Sure, anytime.
Perfect. Have a nice day.
Thank you. You too. So guys, I hope it was worth to watch and you've got now a clearer picture about the present and future of Powered Up. As you heard, there will be some promising new updates coming, so don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell. I will bring you the latest news and details about the Powered Up and everything related to LEGO RC. See you next time, bye bye.